Why didn't you tell us he had money? The question hung in the air like poison, and I watched my brother's face turn the color of curdled milk. We were standing in the lawyer's office, mahogany desk, leather chairs, the smell of old books and older secrets, and for the first time in 12 years, my siblings were finally interested in what I had to say. You know, people talk about karma like it's this mystical force, this cosmic accountant balancing books in the sky. But I learned something different during those 12 years of hell. Karma isn't magical. It's just patience. It's sitting still while people destroy themselves with their own greed, their own cruelty, their own absolute certainty that they'll never face consequences. And then, when they've dug the hole deep enough, karma is just stepping aside and letting them fall in. How are you all doing today? I hope you're somewhere comfortable, maybe with a cup of coffee or tea, because what I'm about to tell you is the kind of story that needs your full attention. Whether you're watching from home, on your commute, or taking a break from your own family drama, I promise you this. By the end of this, you'll understand that being called useless was the greatest gift my family ever gave me. My name is Emily Hartwell, and this is the story of how I went from the family doormat, the pathetic daughter who wasted her life caring for a dying father, to the woman who owned everything my siblings had ever wanted and watched them beg for scraps. But let me start from the beginning, because you need to understand exactly how thoroughly I was destroyed before I could become who I am now. I was 23 when Dad got sick. 23, fresh out of college with a degree in art history that my family mocked at every opportunity, and absolutely convinced that love and loyalty meant something. I believed that family was forever. I believed that if you sacrificed for the people you loved, they would remember. They would care. They would show up when it mattered. I believed that being good was enough. God, I was stupid. The funeral was 3 days ago, and I'm still wearing the same black dress I wore to the service. Not because I can't afford another one, though that's certainly what my sister Victoria thinks, but because I wanted them to see me exactly as they'd always seen me. Small. Forgettable. Beneath their notice. Victoria stood at the front of the church in a designer suit that cost more than most people's cars, her blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon, her makeup immaculate despite the tears she'd forced out for the cameras. Our father was a complicated man, she'd said, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. But he taught us the value of independence, of making our own way in the world. The value of independence. That's what she called it when she moved to Boston 12 years ago and never came back. When she sent Christmas cards but never visited. When she was too busy with her marketing career to come home even once during the worst of Dad's illness. My brother Daniel spoke next, his Rolex catching the light as he gripped the pulpit. That Rolex bought with Dad's money he'd claimed was for caring for Dad's final expenses, but had somehow ended up on his wrist instead. Dad was a proud man, Daniel said. He wouldn't have wanted us dwelling on the hard times. He'd want us to celebrate his life, his achievements, his legacy. His legacy. The one Daniel had spent a decade trying to liquidate, sell off, divide up before Dad was even cold. They didn't mention me during the eulogies. Not once. I was the daughter who never left. The one who quit her promising career at a gallery in Seattle to move back home when Dad's diagnosis came through. The one who learned to change catheters and manage medication schedules and hold his hand through the bad nights when the pain was too much and he couldn't remember who I was anymore. I was useless. They'd told me so 100 times. Emily's wasting her life, Victoria had said during one of her rare phone calls 5 years ago. I'd picked up Dad's phone by accident, heard her talking to Daniel. She could have done something with that degree. Instead, she's playing nursemaid to a man who doesn't even know her name half the time. She's always been the weak one, Daniel had agreed. No ambition. No drive. Pathetic, really. At least when he finally dies, she'll be free to figure out her life, though I doubt she'll manage anything impressive. I'd hung up quietly. Dad had been having a good day, actually. He'd known my name, told me about his childhood, eaten the soup I'd made. But I didn't correct my siblings. I just kept showing up, kept caring, kept being useless. The lawyer cleared his throat, pulling me back to the present. His name was Richard Thornberry, and he'd been Dad's lawyer for 35 years. He was looking at my siblings with something that might have been pity or might have been contempt. I couldn't quite tell. I asked if any of you had seen Emily recently, he repeated, because there are some matters in your father's will that require her presence. Victoria waved a dismissive hand. She's probably hiding somewhere. You know how she is. Never could handle stress. Emily. She raised her voice like she was calling a dog. Emily, if you're skulking around, the lawyer needs you. I stepped out from behind the door where I'd been standing, watching them paw through Dad's office like vultures over a carcass. They'd arrived at his house, my house, where I'd lived for 12 years, less than an hour after the funeral ended. Didn't even take off their funeral clothes before starting to inventory what they thought they'd inherit. I'm here, I said quietly. Victoria jumped, her hand flying to her chest. God, Emily, you scared me. Why are you lurking? I live here, I reminded her. This is my home. Daniel snorted. For now. Once we settle the estate, you'll need to figure out your living situation. The house will need to be sold, obviously. But don't worry, we'll make sure you get your share. It's not much, but it should be enough for a deposit on an apartment somewhere. How generous, I said, and something in my tone made Victoria's eyes narrow. Don't get an attitude, Emily. We all know you sacrificed to be here, but that was your choice. Dad's assets need to be divided fairly among all his children. Fairly, I repeated. Right. Like how you divided the $50,000 he gave you for his care, Victoria? The money that somehow went to renovating your kitchen instead. Her face flushed. That was a gift. And the $75,000 you took, Daniel? Also a gift? Because I have the bank statements that say otherwise. The room went very quiet. Richard Thornberry's mouth twitched. It might have been a smile. Perhaps, he said smoothly, we should begin reading the will. Miss Hartwell, Emily, if you would take a seat. I sat in the leather chair across from his desk. Victoria and Daniel remained standing, too agitated to sit, too certain of their impending windfall to show proper decorum. Richard opened a folder, removed several documents, and began to read. I, Jonathan Hartwell, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. The standard legal language washed over us. I watched my siblings, watched them mentally calculating their shares. The house was worth at least $800,000. Dad's pension had been substantial. There were savings accounts, investment portfolios, the old car that was actually a vintage collector's item worth 6 figures. They were adding it up, dividing by 3, planning their spending. To my daughter Victoria, who has chosen her own path in life, I leave the sum of $10,000 and my best wishes for her continued success. Victoria's mouth fell open. 10,000? There must be a mistake. To my son Daniel, who has always valued independence above family, I leave the sum of $10,000 and the gold watch that belonged to his grandfather. This is insane. Daniel exploded. 10,000? The old man had millions. Please, Richard said, his voice carrying an edge now. Let me finish. He turned to me, and for the first time since I'd entered the room, his expression softened into something almost warm. To my daughter Emily, who gave up 12 years of her life to care for me when no one else would, who listened when I needed to talk, who held my hand through the darkness, who never asked for anything in return, to Emily, who my other children called useless and pathetic and weak. My breath caught. Dad had heard. He'd heard everything. To Emily, I leave the entirety of my estate. Every dollar in every account. Every stock, every bond, every patent and trademark. The house, the cars, the collections. Everything I built, everything I earned, everything I am, it's hers. The silence was absolute. Richard looked up from the document, his eyes meeting mine. The estate has been valued at approximately $512 million, Emily. Your father was a very wealthy man, and he wanted to ensure you'd never need anything again. $500 million. The number didn't feel real. It felt like a word in a foreign language, like something that existed in a different universe from the one where I'd been shopping at thrift stores and eating rice and beans for dinner so I could afford Dad's medications. Victoria found her voice first, shrill and disbelieving. 500 million? That's impossible. Dad didn't have that kind of money. He lived in a regular house, drove a regular car. Your father, Richard said calmly, was the founder and sole patent holder of 17 pieces of medical technology currently used in hospitals worldwide. He chose to live modestly, but his royalties were substantial. He also made very smart investments over the years. He turned back to me. Emily, there are additional provisions. Your father has left detailed instructions about the management of his patents and business interests. He trained you over the past 12 years, didn't he? The late-night conversations, the business lessons he claimed were just stories. The pieces fell into place. All those nights when Dad couldn't sleep and we'd talk for hours. He wasn't just rambling or reminiscing. He'd been teaching me. About his inventions, about the business deals, about the shell corporations and offshore accounts that kept his wealth hidden from prying eyes. He'd been preparing me. There's one more thing, Richard said, sliding a letter across the desk. Your father wanted you to have this. I picked up the envelope with shaking hands. No, not shaking. Steady. For the first time in 12 years, my hands were completely steady. I opened the letter and read Dad's familiar handwriting. My dearest Emily. Asterisk if you're reading this, I'm finally free of the prison my body became. Don't mourn too long, I'm glad to go. Asterisk. Asterisk, I heard everything they said about you. Every cruel word, every dismissive comment, every time they called you weak or useless or pathetic. I heard it all, and I stayed silent because I needed to know who my children truly were. Asterisk. Asterisk, Victoria and Daniel showed me their hearts. They wanted my money, but not my company. They wanted inheritance, but not relationship. They are not bad people, but they are not your people. Asterisk. Asterisk, you, my darling girl, you showed up. You stayed. You gave up everything, and you never once asked what you'd get in return. That's not weakness. That's strength they'll never comprehend. Asterisk. Asterisk, everything I built is yours now. Use it wisely. Use it generously. Use it to build the life you deserve. Asterisk. And when they come begging, because they will, remember, you owe them nothing. Asterisk, love always. Dad. I folded the letter carefully and looked up at my siblings. Victoria was crying now, real tears this time. Emily, please, there's been a misunderstanding. We didn't mean those things we said. Yes, you did, I said quietly. You meant every word. Daniel stepped forward, his expression shifting to something that might have been intended as apologetic. Look, we were frustrated. Dealing with a sick parent is hard on everyone. But we're family. Surely we can work something out. Work something out, I repeated. You mean, give you money? Share the inheritance you spent 12 years telling each other I didn't deserve. You can't seriously be considering keeping it all, Victoria said, her voice rising. $500 million? What are you going to do with that kind of money? You don't know anything about business or investing. Actually, Richard interrupted, Emily has been managing several of your father's accounts for the past 3 years. She's proven remarkably adept at financial planning. Jonathan trusted her completely. Because he'd taught me. Every night, while my siblings posted vacation photos and congratulated themselves on escaping the burden of a sick father, I'd been getting a master's degree in business from a dying genius who wanted to make sure I'd be protected. I'm keeping it all, I said. Every dollar. Every patent. Every single thing Dad left me. Because I earned it and you didn't. You can't do this. Daniel shouted. We'll contest the will. We'll sue. You can try, Richard said mildly. But Jonathan's will is ironclad. He had it reviewed by 3 different law firms. He documented every instance of your neglect, every time you took money meant for his care and used it for yourselves. He has recordings. Recordings. Victoria went pale. Phone conversations. Video footage. Your father was very thorough. Richard's smile was sharp as a knife. Emily, if you're ready, we have a lot to discuss about the transition of assets. Victoria, Daniel, I believe you know the way out. They didn't move. They stood there, frozen in shock and disbelief, while the world they'd taken for granted shattered around them. I stood up, smoothing down my faded black dress. The one they'd mocked. The one they'd pointed at as proof of my failure, my uselessness, my complete inability to succeed at life. There's something else you should know, I said, my voice steady and cold. Do you remember Marcus Chin? Victoria blinked. Your boyfriend from college? The one you broke up with when Dad got sick. I didn't break up with him. I asked him to wait, and he did. For 12 years, he waited. We talked every night after I put Dad to bed. We planned. We dreamed. We built something together, long distance, while you both told me I'd die alone. I pulled out my phone and showed them the photo on my screen. Me in a simple white dress, Marcus in a gray suit, both of us smiling in front of a courthouse. We got married 6 months ago, I said. Dad was there. He walked me down the aisle in his wheelchair. It was a small ceremony, just family, real family, not the kind that shows up only when there's something to inherit. You're married. Daniel's voice came out strangled. To a man who became a successful patent attorney, ironically enough. He'll be handling all of Dad's business interests going forward. Actually, you might know his firm, Chin and Associates. They're based in Seattle. Very successful. We'll be moving there next month. This was the moment. The moment I'd been imagining during all those endless nights when I'd questioned everything, when I'd wondered if I was wasting my life, if my siblings were right about me. You called me useless at Dad's funeral, I said softly. You said it loud enough for everyone to hear. You wanted to humiliate me one last time, to make sure everyone knew what a failure I was. And you know what? I'm grateful. Because when I give interviews about Dad's charitable foundation, the $500 million foundation that will fund medical research and support family caregivers, everyone's going to hear this story. They're going to hear about the daughter who stayed and the siblings who couldn't be bothered. They're going to know your names, Victoria and Daniel. They're going to know exactly what kind of people you are. You wouldn't, Victoria whispered. I already did. The press release goes out tomorrow. Dad wrote it himself, actually. He had 2 years to get every detail perfect. I walked to the door, then paused and looked back at them. You were right about one thing, I said. I did waste 12 years of my life. But not on Dad. I wasted them thinking you might eventually care. Thinking that blood meant something. Thinking that if I just loved you enough, sacrificed enough, gave enough, you'd love me back. I smiled, and it felt like ice cracking. Thank you for teaching me better. And then I walked out of that office, out of their lives, and into the future I'd earned. But that's jumping ahead. You need to understand how I got here, how the useless daughter became the woman who destroyed her family with a smile. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the day everything changed. The phone call came on a Tuesday in September, right in the middle of my lunch break at the Rothstein Gallery in Seattle. I was 23 years old, barely 6 months into my dream job as an assistant curator, and I was eating a sandwich in the break room while sketching ideas for an upcoming exhibition on contemporary sculptors. Emily? It's Dr. Morrison. Dr. Morrison was our family physician, the man who'd given me checkups since I was 5. The fact that he was calling me instead of my parents made my stomach drop. It's your father. He's had a collapse. We've run tests and... Emily, I need you to come home. The diagnosis was a myotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. Progressive, degenerative, fatal. 2 to 5 years, the neurologist said, though some patients lasted longer with good care. Good care meant constant supervision, medical equipment, home modifications. Someone who could be there for every appointment, every medication change, every crisis. Someone who could watch him slowly lose the ability to move, to speak, to breathe on his own. I sat in the neurologist's office with Mom, Dad, Victoria, and Daniel, listening to the doctor explain what the future would look like. Mom was crying quietly. Dad was staring at the wall, his face blank with shock. Victoria checked her phone twice during the explanation. After the appointment, we gathered in the hospital cafeteria. Dad had been admitted for observation, and the 5 of us sat around a too small table under fluorescent lights that made everything feel even more surreal. We need to make arrangements, Mom said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking around her coffee cup. The doctor said he'll need full-time care within 6 months. The house needs to be modified, wheelchair ramps, bathroom adjustments, a hospital bed. And someone needs to coordinate his medical care. We should hire a nurse, Victoria said immediately. A professional. Someone trained. Do you have any idea what round-the-clock nursing care costs? Daniel demanded. We're talking thousands per week. For years, potentially. So, what do you suggest? Mom asked. I can't do it alone. I have my teaching job and the insurance. We need the insurance. They all looked at each other. No one looked at me. I could take a leave of absence from my job, I offered quietly. Just for a while, until we figure things out. Absolutely not, Dad said, his voice rough. These were the first words he'd spoken since the diagnosis. Emily, you just started your career. You're not throwing that away for me. It wouldn't be throwing it away, Dad. It would just be postponing. No. His tone was final. We'll figure something else out. But there wasn't something else. Over the next 3 weeks, we ran the numbers again and again. Professional care was impossibly expensive. Mom couldn't quit her job without losing the health insurance that was covering Dad's astronomical medical costs. Victoria lived in Boston and had just made partner at her marketing firm. Daniel was finishing his MBA and starting a new position with an investment company in New York. And I had a job I loved, a boyfriend I adored, a life I'd just started building. But I also had a father who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd driven me to art classes every Saturday for 10 years, who'd cried when I graduated college because he was so proud. A father who was dying and who needed help. The decision wasn't really a decision at all. I gave notice at the gallery. They were kind about it, told me I could come back when things settled down. I think we both knew I wouldn't. I broke the news to Marcus over dinner at our favorite restaurant, the little Vietnamese place where we'd had our first date. He was 25, brilliant, finishing his law degree. We'd been together for 3 years and had started talking about marriage, about the future, about all the things we'd do together. I have to go home, I told him, my throat tight. Dad needs me. Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. For how long? I don't know. 2 years, maybe 5. However long it takes. I waited for him to say the thing I knew was coming, the thing anyone rational would say, that 2 to 5 years was too long, that we were too young to put our lives on hold, that long-distance relationships never worked. Instead, he said, Okay, you have to go. And I'll be here when you get back. He squeezed my fingers. Emily, I love you. I'm not going to fall apart because we have to be apart for a while. We'll make it work. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. But I'd seen the statistics. I knew what happened to relationships under this kind of strain. Marcus. No arguments, he said firmly. You go take care of your dad. I'll finish law school, start my career. We'll talk every day. And when this is over, we'll pick up exactly where we left off. I moved home 3 weeks later. The first 6 months were a blur of medical appointments, equipment deliveries, insurance battles, and home modifications. Dad declined faster than anyone expected. By month 4, he needed a walker. By month 6, he was in a wheelchair full-time. Mom and I developed a system. She worked during the day while I managed Dad's care. In the evenings, she'd take over so I could have a few hours to myself, hours I spent on the phone with Marcus, telling him about my day, listening to his stories about law school, pretending we were still the same people we'd been 6 months earlier. Victoria called every Sunday. The conversations were always the same. How's Dad? How are you holding up? I wish I could help more, but work is crazy right now. Daniel called less frequently, usually when he needed money. Just a loan, he'd say. I'll pay you back next month. He never did. Mom started getting tired more easily. She was 58 and teaching full-time while emotionally processing her husband's terminal illness. By the end of the first year, she looked a decade older. You should take a break, I told her one night after a particularly difficult day. Dad had fallen trying to get to the bathroom on his own, and it had taken both of us 20 minutes to get him back into his wheelchair. Maybe visit your sister in Florida for a week. I can handle things here. I can't leave you alone with this, Emily. I won't be alone. Victoria said she might come visit next month. She didn't. She canceled 3 days before her scheduled flight because a client emergency came up. Daniel visited once that first year, stayed for 4 hours, and spent most of that time in the guest room on work calls. But Marcus kept his promise. Every single night, my phone would ring at 9 o'clock. We'd talk for an hour, sometimes 2. He told me about his classes, his internship, his friends. I told him about Dad's good days and bad days, about the small victories and crushing setbacks. "I miss you," he'd say at the end of every call. "I miss you too," I'd respond. And I meant it, even though parts of me were starting to forget what it felt like to be the person he'd fallen in love with. The second year was harder. Dad lost the ability to use his hands, which meant I had to feed him, help him with everything. His speech started slurring, making communication frustrating for both of us. He'd get angry when I couldn't understand him, then apologize afterward, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry, Emily," he'd say over and over. "You should be living your life, not changing my diapers." "Dad, stop. I'm exactly where I need to be." But sometimes, late at night, I'd wonder if that was true. I was 25 and hadn't left the house for anything besides grocery shopping and medical appointments in months. All my friends from college had moved on with their lives. They'd stopped inviting me to things after the 10th time I'd had to cancel. Marcus still called every night. Then Mom got sick. It started small, fatigue, some weight loss. She blamed stress. But when the fatigue didn't improve and she started having night sweats, I made her see a doctor. Lymphoma. Stage 3. I sat in another doctor's office, listening to another specialist explain another treatment plan, and felt something inside me simply shut down. Like a breaker flipping in my mind, protecting me from the overload. Mom started chemotherapy. She was so sick she could barely get out of bed. And I became the sole caretaker for 2 dying parents. That's when Victoria finally came home. She arrived on a Friday evening in March, her designer luggage perfectly matched, her hair and makeup photo ready, despite the 6-hour flight from Boston. "Oh, she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled like expensive perfume. "I'm so sorry I haven't been here more. Work has been absolutely insane." She stayed for the weekend. 3 days. During which she took exactly 1 shift watching Dad 4 hours while I took Mom to a chemotherapy appointment. When I came home, Victoria was on her laptop in the living room, Dad's call button unplugged. He kept pressing it for every little thing, she explained. I needed to focus on this presentation. Dad had wet himself because he couldn't call for help to get to the bathroom. Sunday night, Victoria sat me down at the kitchen table. "We need to talk about long-term plans, Emily." "What kind of plans?" "You can't do this forever. You're 25 years old. You need to think about your future." "I am thinking about my future. Right now, my future is taking care of Mom and Dad." Victoria sighed. "That's exactly what I mean. You're so deep in this that you can't see how it's destroying you. Look at you. When's the last time you wore makeup? Or went anywhere besides the doctor's office? When's the last time you visited?" I shot back. "I'm here now. And I'm trying to help you see that this isn't sustainable. Maybe we should look into facilities. You want to put them in a nursing home. I want you to have a life." Her voice rose. "God, Emily, do you think Dad would want this for you? Spending your 20s as an unpaid nurse. What I think is that Dad needs care and none of you are willing to provide it. Because we have lives. Careers. I just made partner, Em. I can't put that on hold. And I had a career too. A good one. But someone had to make a sacrifice and apparently that someone was me." She left the next morning. Before she went, she hugged me tight and said, "I love you, you know that? And I just want what's best for you." 2 weeks later, I got a notification that she'd transferred money into Dad's account. $5,000 with a note. "For Dad's care. Hope this helps." It did help. It helped pay for the medication that insurance didn't cover, for the special foods Dad could still swallow, for the gas to get Mom back and forth to her treatments. 3 months later, Victoria called and asked if I could send the money back. "I'm really sorry, but I'm renovating the kitchen and I'm a bit over budget. Dad doesn't actually need it right now, does he? I'll send it again next month, I promise." I sent it back. She never sent it again. Mom's cancer went into remission after 8 months of treatment. She went back to teaching part-time, still exhausted but determined to keep our insurance active. Dad continued to decline. By year 3, he could barely speak at all, could barely swallow. We communicated through blinks and eye movements. And Marcus still called every night. I'm coming to visit next month, he said one evening during our call. I've got a break between semesters. I'll stay for 2 weeks. Marcus, you don't have to. I want to. I miss your face. I miss your terrible jokes. I miss everything about you. He came in June. I picked him up from the airport, and when I saw him walking through the arrivals gate, tall and handsome and exactly the same as I remembered, something in my chest cracked open. We hugged in the middle of the airport, and I started crying. Just broke down completely, right there in public, sobbing into his shirt while he held me and murmured that it was okay. Everything was okay. He was here now. Those 2 weeks were a glimpse of a different life. Marcus helped with Dad's care without flinching, learned to operate the feeding tube, sat with him for hours. He took over in the mornings so I could sleep in. He cooked dinner every night. He held me when the stress became too much. On his last night, we sat on the back porch after everyone else was asleep. "Marry me," he said. I turned to stare at him. "What?" "Marry me, Emily. Not now, obviously. When this is over. When you're ready. But marry me." He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it. A simple diamond ring, elegant and perfect. "Marcus, you don't have to answer now. Just know that I'm here. That I'm committed. That I love you exactly as much as I did 3 years ago, and I'm going to keep loving you until you're ready to come back to me." I took the ring with shaking hands. Slipped it on my finger. It fit perfectly. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, when this is over. Yes to everything." He kissed me there in the moonlight, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt like myself again. He flew back to Seattle the next day. Started his first year at a prestigious law firm. Called me every night, just like always. And I went back to the routine of care and medication schedules and doctor's appointments and slowly watching my father die. But now I had a ring on my finger and a promise for the future. Now I had hope. The money problem started in year 4. Mom's cancer came back. Aggressive this time, resistant to the previous treatment protocol. New chemotherapy, more expensive drugs, specialist consultations in Seattle that required travel and hotels. Dad needed a feeding tube replacement, new equipment, a home health aide 3 times a week because I physically couldn't lift him anymore without hurting myself. The insurance covered some of it. But insurance never covers everything. We burned through their savings in 6 months. "We need to sell the house," Mom said one night. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the one where I'd eaten breakfast every morning of my childhood, surrounded by medical bills and insurance statements. "No," Dad managed to say. His speech was almost gone, but he could still force out single words with enormous effort. "Emily." He meant that the house was supposed to be mine someday. That he didn't want me to spend 6 years caring for them only to end up with nothing. "Dad, we need the money." "There's another option," Daniel said. I hadn't even known he was on speakerphone until he spoke. Mom had called him and Victoria earlier to discuss the finances. "Dad has equity in the house," Daniel continued. "We could take out a reverse mortgage. That way we get the cash we need without actually selling. And you could stay there as long as Dad's alive." It sounded reasonable. It sounded like Daniel was actually trying to help for once. "How much could we get?" Mom asked. "Probably 300,000, given the current market and Dad's age. That should cover medical expenses for a while." We did it. Signed the paperwork, got the money, used it to pay off the mountain of medical debt that had been crushing us. I didn't read the fine print. I trusted that Daniel, with his fancy MBA and investment job, knew what he was doing. 6 months later, Mom died. It was sudden, a stroke, the doctors said, probably stress-related. She went to bed one night and didn't wake up. I found her in the morning when I went to check on her before starting Dad's morning routine. I was 27 years old, and I'd just lost my mother. The funeral was small. Mom's sister came from Florida. A few of her teacher colleagues. Victoria flew in for 2 days, Daniel for 1. They cried appropriately, hugged people, accepted condolences. After the funeral, we gathered at the house for the reception. I'd ordered sandwich trays and made coffee, operating on autopilot. Dad was in his room with a hospice nurse. He'd cried when I told him about Mom, silent tears streaming down his face because he couldn't even speak to express his grief anymore. Daniel cornered me in the kitchen. We need to talk about the house, he said. Right now? Mom's been dead for 3 days. Which is why we need to talk about it now, before things get complicated. He pulled out his phone, showed me a document. The reverse mortgage has a clause. If one of the borrowers dies, the loan becomes due in full within 6 months. My brain struggled to process his words. Due in full? But we already spent that money. I know. Which means we have 2 options: pay back the $300,000 plus interest or sell the house. He looked around the kitchen, calculating. The house is worth about $800,000 now. After we pay off the reverse mortgage and the remaining medical debt, there should be about $400,000 left. Split 3 ways, that's a little over $133,000 each. Split 3 ways. My voice came out hollow. Daniel, I live here. Dad lives here. This is our home. And it's also an asset that needs to be liquidated. Come on, be reasonable. You can't afford to keep this house on your own, and Dad. He lowered his voice. Dad's got maybe a year left, probably less. You're going to have to move anyway. You son of a bitch. I'm being practical. Besides, that $133,000 will set you up. You can get an apartment, start over. Maybe finally go back to work. I can't work. Dad needs round-the-clock care. So we'll find him a good facility. A place with nurses and proper equipment. He'll probably be more comfortable anyway. Get out. Daniel blinked. What? Get out of this house. Get out right now before I do something I regret. Emily, you're being emotional. Get out. He left. Victoria followed him, murmuring something about giving me space to process. I stood alone in the kitchen of my childhood home, surrounded by funeral leftovers, and realized with perfect clarity that I was completely alone. Dad couldn't speak. Mom was gone. My siblings saw me as an obstacle to their inheritance. And Marcus. Marcus was 1,000 miles away, building his career, living his life. I called him that night, after the guests had gone and I'd finished Dad's evening care routine. I can't do this anymore, I told him. I can't. What happened? I explained about the reverse mortgage, about Daniel's demand to sell the house, about the facility he wanted to put Dad in. Come here, Marcus said immediately. Come to Seattle. Bring your dad. We'll figure it out together. Marcus, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. We've been engaged for 2 years. Let's get married. Let's do it now. You can move here, we'll get your dad the best care available, and you can finally stop carrying this alone. It was tempting. God, it was so tempting. I need to think about it, I said. Of course. Take your time. I love you. I love you too. I hung up and sat in the darkness of the living room, next to Dad's hospital bed. He was asleep, his breathing assisted by the BiPAP machine that helped him at night. This was my life. This had been my life for 4 years. Care and medications and watching someone I loved slowly disintegrate. And now my siblings wanted to take even this away, wanted to strip me of the home I'd sacrificed everything to maintain, wanted to warehouse Dad in a facility so they could get their inheritance. I reached over and took Dad's hand. His fingers were thin and wasted, barely able to return my squeeze. What do I do, Dad? I whispered. His eyes opened. In the dim light from the hallway, I could see him looking at me. He couldn't answer, couldn't give me advice. But he squeezed my hand 3 times. Our code. I love you. I love you too, I said. And I'm not giving up. I don't care what they want. This is your home, and you're staying here. I meant it. Even though I had no idea how I'd make it work, even though the debt was crushing and the future was impossible, I meant every word. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. Miss Hartwell? This is Richard Thornberry. I was your father's attorney many years ago. I understand he's quite ill now. Yes, I said warily. How did you? Your father contacted me 6 months ago. He asked me to reach out to you if anything happened to your mother. I'm very sorry for your loss. Thank you, but I don't understand. Your father has asked me to review his affairs. Estate planning, medical directives, that sort of thing. Would you be available to meet this week? I looked at Dad, who was awake and watching me. Something in his expression made me say yes. Richard Thornberry came to the house 2 days later. He spent an hour alone with Dad, the two of them communicating through the letter board I'd made, Dad painstakingly indicating letters to spell out words. When Richard emerged, he looked shaken. "Miss Hartwell, Emily, your father has made some very specific requests regarding his estate. He wants to make sure you're protected." "There's not much estate left to protect," I said bitterly. "My brother saw to that." "About that. Your father has asked me to investigate the reverse mortgage. He doesn't believe he signed those documents." My heart stopped. "What?" "He says he never agreed to a reverse mortgage. He thinks your brother may have exercised power of attorney without proper authorization." Power of attorney. Daniel had gotten Dad to sign a limited power of attorney years ago, supposedly to help manage bills while Dad was sick. "Are you saying Daniel forged documents?" "I'm saying I'm going to look into it. In the meantime, your father wants to update his will. He has some very specific instructions." Over the next week, Richard came to the house every day. Dad spelled out his wishes, one painful letter at a time. It took hours, exhausting him completely, but he insisted on continuing. He told Richard about the patents, about the technology he developed decades ago, medical devices that were still in use today, about the royalty payments that had been quietly accumulating in offshore accounts, hidden from everyone, even Mom. He told Richard about Victoria's loan that was never repaid, about Daniel's power of attorney abuse, about the 12 years I'd spent caring for him while my siblings built their lives. And he told Richard what he wanted done with his estate when he died. All of it to me. Every penny. Every patent. Every hidden account. "Your siblings get $10,000 each," Richard explained after one of these sessions. "Everything else is yours. He's very clear on this, Emily. He wants you taken care of." I don't understand. Dad never talked about money. He always said he was just getting by on his pension. He lied to protect his assets. Smart move, given how your siblings behaved. Richard's expression was grim. "The estate is worth approximately $500 million. $500 million. The number was so absurd it didn't feel real. It felt like a joke, like a dream, like something that happened to other people in movies. That can't be right." "It is. Your father was extraordinarily successful. He just chose not to advertise it." Richard pulled out a folder thick with documents. "This is going to take some time to organize. But you need to know, when your father passes, your life is going to change dramatically. Are you prepared for that?" Was I prepared? I was 27 years old, wearing clothes from 5 years ago, hadn't had a haircut in months, spent my days changing adult diapers and crushing medications. I had $47 in my checking account and an engagement ring I hadn't looked at in weeks because it reminded me too much of everything I'd lost. Prepared? I wasn't prepared for anything except more loss, more pain, more days exactly like the one before. "I don't know," I said honestly. Richard studied me for a long moment. "Your father told me something else. He said you're the strongest person he knows. He said everyone underestimated you, including him at first. But these past 6 years, you've proven you have more courage than anyone in your family." I started crying. I couldn't help it, because no one had said anything like that to me in so long. Everyone saw me as pathetic Emily, useless Emily, Emily who wasted her life. But Dad saw something different. "He's proud of you," Richard said gently. "He wants you to know that. And he wants you to be ready, because when your siblings find out about the will, they're going to make your life hell." He was right about that. Dad lived for 8 more months. 8 months where Daniel called every week demanding to know when we were selling the house. 8 months where Victoria sent increasingly passive-aggressive texts about practical decisions and facing reality. 8 months where I cared for Dad with the knowledge that everything was about to change, but no idea what that change would look like. Marcus called every night, patient and steady. We got married quietly at a courthouse, just me and Marcus and a justice of the peace. Dad was there in his wheelchair, spelling out his blessing letter by letter. It was the happiest day I'd had in 6 years. And then, on a Tuesday in November, Dad stopped breathing. The hospice nurse called it. I held his hand and told him I loved him and watched the man who'd taught me everything slip away quietly in the house where I'd grown up. I was 28 years old, and I'd just lost everything that mattered. Except I hadn't. I'd lost my parents, but I'd gained something else. I'd gained power. And when my siblings showed up at the funeral to perform their grief, when they called me useless loud enough for everyone to hear, when they started planning how they'd divide their inheritance, I finally understood what Dad had been preparing me for all along. Not just money. Not just financial security. Revenge. The week after Dad's funeral was when my siblings really started circling. Daniel showed up at the house on Wednesday morning, letting himself in with the key he'd apparently kept from his last visit. I was in the kitchen making coffee, still in my pajamas because I hadn't slept properly in days and didn't see the point in pretending otherwise. "Jesus, you look terrible," he said by way of greeting. "Good morning to you too." He set his laptop on the kitchen table, all business. "We need to talk about the house. I've been in touch with 3 real estate agents, and they all agree we should list immediately. The market's good right now, but it could turn any day." I poured my coffee slowly, adding cream, stirring. Buying time while I decided how to play this. Richard had advised me to say nothing about the will until after the official reading. "Let them show their hands," he'd said. "Let them reveal exactly who they are before you reveal what you know." So I said, "Don't you think we should wait until after we meet with Dad's lawyer?" "Why?" "We already know what's in the will. Standard 3-way split. The lawyer meeting is just a formality." Daniel opened his laptop, pulled up a spreadsheet. "I've run the numbers. After we pay off the reverse mortgage, the remaining medical debt, and funeral expenses, we're looking at about $385,000 to split. That's roughly $128,000 each." "You've been busy. Someone has to be practical." He turned the laptop toward me. "Look, I know this is hard. But, you've been stuck in this house for 6 years. Don't you want to move on? Start your life? That $128,000 could be a fresh start." It was almost funny. Daniel thought $128,000 was life-changing money. Meanwhile, Dad had left me 400 times that amount. "What about Dad's other assets?" I asked carefully. "What other assets?" "His pension died with him. The car's barely worth $5,000. There's some furniture, I guess, but nothing valuable." He genuinely didn't know. Neither of them did. "Okay," I said. "Let's wait for the lawyer meeting before we make any decisions." Daniel frowned. "Why are you being difficult about this?" "I'm not being difficult. I just think we should follow proper procedure." "Fine. But, seriously, you need to start packing. We're not going to be able to keep this house much longer regardless of what you want." He left 20 minutes later, but not before walking through each room like he was taking inventory. I watched him eyeing the furniture, Mom's china cabinet, the paintings on the walls. Calculating value. Planning his share. Victoria called that afternoon. "Danny says you're being weird about selling the house." "I'm not being weird. I just want to wait until we meet with the lawyer." "Why? What difference does it make?" Her voice sharpened with suspicion. You're not trying to claim you deserve more because you were Dad's caregiver, are you?" "Because legally, that's not how inheritance works." "I know how inheritance works, Victoria." "Do you?" "Because Daniel's worried you might try to argue for some kind of compensation. And while we appreciate everything you did, the fact is you chose to stay home. Nobody forced you. Nobody forced me." "Right. Nobody except the reality that one of us had to stay, and neither of them was willing." "I'm not asking for extra compensation," I said, which was technically true. I wasn't asking for anything. Dad had already given it to me. Good. Because that would be really unfair to Danny and me. We have expenses too, you know. I've got a mortgage in Boston, and Danny's trying to start his own investment fund. We all need this money. I'm sure you do. So we can list the house next week? Let's wait for the lawyer meeting. She sighed dramatically. Fine. But, at some point you need to accept that your life here is over. You're 28 years old. You should be excited about starting fresh, not clinging to the past. Starting fresh. Like the past 6 years were something I could just shed like an old coat. Like I could walk away from everything I'd sacrificed and pretend it didn't matter. Marcus came home that weekend. Home. We were married now, but he still lived in Seattle while I'd been finishing Dad's care. Now that Dad was gone, we needed to figure out what our life together would actually look like. He found me in Dad's room on Saturday morning. I'd been sitting in the chair next to the empty hospital bed, staring at nothing. "Hey," he said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "You okay? Do you know what Victoria said to me yesterday? She said I should be excited about starting fresh. Like the past 6 years were just wasted time." Marcus reached for my hand. "They weren't wasted. You know that." "Do I?" I looked at him, this man who'd waited for me through 6 years of phone calls and broken promises and postponed plans. "Marcus, I'm not the person you fell in love with. That girl who worked at the gallery and had dreams and opinions about contemporary sculpture, she's gone. I don't even know who I am anymore." "You're Emily," he said simply. "You're the woman who gave up everything for someone she loved. That's not weakness. That's not wasting your life. That's love in its purest form. My siblings don't see it that way. Your siblings are idiots." He squeezed my hand. "And I need to tell you something. I got an offer this week. Partnership track at my firm. It's what I've been working toward for years." My stomach dropped. That's wonderful, Marcus. It means staying in Seattle, building my career there. But it also means finally having the stability to build a real life together. I want you to come with me to Seattle. Yeah, we can find a place, maybe get a dog like we always talked about. You can figure out what you want to do next, maybe go back to working with art or try something completely new. The point is, we can finally start our life. It sounded perfect. It sounded like everything I dreamed about during those endless nights sitting by Dad's bed. But it also meant leaving. Leaving this house, this town, everything familiar. And there was the small matter of the inheritance my husband didn't know about yet. "Can we talk about this after the will reading?" I asked. Marcus studied my face. "And what aren't you telling me?" "Nothing. There might be some complications with the estate. I want to make sure everything's settled before we make plans." It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't exactly the truth either. The will reading was scheduled for Tuesday at 10 a.m. at Richard Thornberry's office downtown. Victoria flew in Monday night. Daniel drove up from New York that morning. They met me in the parking lot, both of them dressed in expensive suits, looking like they were heading to a business meeting rather than the final disposition of our father's estate. "Finally," Daniel said. "Let's get this over with so we can move forward." We walked into Richard's office together, a united front of sibling solidarity. Except I was united with them only in appearance. In reality, I was on the other side of a chasm they didn't even know existed yet. Richard's office was exactly what you'd expect from a lawyer who'd been practicing for 40 years, dark wood, leather furniture, walls lined with legal books. He greeted us professionally, shook each of our hands, gestured for us to sit. "Before we begin," he said, settling behind his desk, "I want to make sure everyone understands that I'm reading your father's legal will as executed 4 months ago. Jonathan was of sound mind when he made these decisions, and the will has been reviewed by multiple legal experts for validity." "Of course," Victoria said. "We're not contesting anything. We just want to know the details so we can move forward." "Very well." Richard opened the folder in front of him and began reading the standard legal preamble. I watched my siblings as he read. Victoria was checking her phone intermittently, probably calculating flight times back to Boston. Daniel was already pulling up his spreadsheet, ready to adjust the numbers based on the official accounting. Neither of them suspected a thing. Richard read the bequests to Victoria and Daniel, $10,000 each, and the gold watch for Daniel. I saw the exact moment it registered, the way their faces went from bored to confused to angry in the space of 3 seconds. And then he read my portion. The entirety of the estate. $512 million. Victoria's phone clattered to the floor. Daniel's spreadsheet fell from nerveless fingers. And I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap, watching them realize that everything they'd counted on, everything they'd planned for, everything they'd believed was rightfully theirs, was gone. The silence in that office was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. "This is a mistake," Daniel said finally. His voice was shaking. "There's been some kind of mistake." "There's no mistake," Richard said calmly. "Your father was very clear about his wishes." $500 million? Victoria's voice came out as a squeak. "Dad didn't have $500 million. He lived in a middle-class house. He drove a 10-year-old car. This is insane. Your father was the patent holder for 17 pieces of medical technology. The royalties alone have been substantial for decades. He also made very wise investments over the years. Richard pulled out another document. He's left detailed records. Would you like to see them? I want to see proof that this will is legitimate, Daniel snapped. Did you know about this? I met his eyes. Dad told me some things over the past few months. You manipulated him. Daniel stood up, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. He was dying, he was vulnerable, and you manipulated him into leaving everything to you. Your father reached out to me, Richard interjected. Emily didn't initiate these changes. Jonathan did. And he was evaluated by 3 different doctors who all confirmed he was mentally competent when he executed this will. Victoria was crying now, real tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. This isn't fair. Emily, you can't do this. We're family. We are family, I agreed. Which is why I spent 6 years caring for Dad while you built your careers. Which is why I was here for every doctor's appointment, every bad night, every moment of pain while you sent cards and occasional checks. We had lives. Victoria shouted. We had jobs and responsibilities. And I didn't? My voice was quiet, but it cut through her hysteria like a blade. I had a career I loved. A life I was building. I gave it all up because someone had to, and neither of you is willing. So this is revenge? Daniel demanded. You're punishing us for not throwing away our futures? No, Daniel. This is consequence. This is what happens when you abandon someone who needed you and then expect to profit from their death. We'll contest the will, Victoria said, wiping at her tears. We'll fight this. Dad clearly wasn't in his right mind. I welcome you to try, Richard said. But I should warn you that your father anticipated this reaction. He has documentation of every conversation he had with each of you over the past 6 years. Every phone call where you asked for money. Every time you promised to visit and didn't. Every instance where you prioritized your wants over his needs. He pulled out a thick envelope. He also recorded his reasons for these decisions. Would you like me to play them? The room went silent. That's what I thought, Richard said. Now, if you'll excuse us, I need to discuss the estate management with Emily. Victoria, Daniel, you're welcome to stay for your bequests. Keep the 10,000, Daniel snarled. And the watch. I don't want anything from him. He stormed out. Victoria followed, sobbing dramatically. I sat there, listening to their footsteps fade down the hallway, and waited to feel something. Triumph, maybe? Satisfaction. Victory. Instead, I just felt tired. That went about as expected, Richard said. He didn't sound surprised. Are you all right? I don't know what I am. He pulled out another folder, this one even thicker. Your father left instructions. He wanted me to tell you something. What? That he's sorry. Sorry you had to carry this burden alone. Sorry your siblings failed you both. And sorry that his gift comes with the complication of their hatred. Richard paused. But he also wanted you to know that you earned every penny. Not by caring for him, he would never reduce your love to a transaction, but by being the only one of his children who understood what really mattered. My throat was tight. What's that? Showing up. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I nodded, unable to speak. Now, Richard said, his tone becoming brisk and businesslike, we have a lot to discuss. The estate is complex. There are patents that need management, investments that need oversight, charitable foundations your father wanted established. You're going to need a team, lawyers, accountants, financial advisors. I can help you assemble that team, but ultimately, these decisions are yours. I don't know anything about managing this kind of wealth. Your father thought you did. He spent years teaching you, didn't he? All those late-night conversations about his business, his investments, his inventions. He was preparing you, Emily. And he believed you were ready. Was I? I was 28 years old. 6 years ago, I'd been a girl who liked art and making plans with her boyfriend. Now I was a woman sitting in a lawyer's office being told I was worth $500 million. There's something else, Richard said. Your father included a letter for you. He wanted you to read it after the will reading, after you saw your siblings' reaction. He handed me an envelope. My name was written on it in Dad's shaky handwriting from before the disease took his fine motor control. I opened it with trembling hands. My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, you've just watched your siblings reveal exactly who they are. I'm sorry you had to see it, but I needed you to see it clearly so you'd never doubt your decisions going forward. They will hate you for this. They will call you manipulative, greedy, cruel. They will tell everyone who'll listen that you stole their inheritance, that you took advantage of a dying man. Let them talk. Their words can't hurt you anymore because you know the truth. You loved when they didn't. You stayed when they left. You gave when they only took. This money isn't payment for your care. Your love was never for sale, and I never thought it was. This money is protection. It's freedom. It's my way of making sure you'll never need anything from anyone ever again. Use it wisely. Use it generously. Use it to build the life you deserve, the one you put on hold for me. And Emily? Forgive them eventually if you can. Not because they deserve it, but because holding on to anger will poison the life I want you to live. But take your time. You've earned the right to be angry first. All my love, Dad. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. When I looked up, Richard was watching me with concern. Are you sure you're all right? Ask me again in a year, I said. Right now, I need to figure out what happens next. What happened next was war. Victoria and Daniel didn't contest the will. Richard had made it clear that was a losing battle. Instead, they launched a different kind of assault. They told everyone who would listen that I'd manipulated Dad. That I'd isolated him from his family, poisoned him against them, taken advantage of his vulnerable state to steal their inheritance. Within a week, 3 different reporters had contacted me asking for comment on the caregiver abuse allegations. An investigative journalist wrote an article titled, "When Caregiving Becomes Financial Elder Abuse," that didn't name me specifically, but included enough details that everyone in town knew exactly who they were talking about. Victoria gave a tearful interview to a Boston newspaper about how her mentally ill sister had destroyed their family. Daniel appeared on a podcast about inheritance disputes, painting himself as the victim of a calculated scheme. My phone blew up with messages from people I barely knew, some supportive, most just nosy. The neighbors started watching me when I left the house. Someone spray-painted "thief" on the garage door. Marcus flew home immediately when he heard. "We're leaving," he said, finding me sitting in the dark living room at 2 a.m., unable to sleep. "We're selling this house, moving to Seattle, and leaving all this behind." "I can't sell the house." "Not yet. Dad wanted me to have it. Dad wanted you to be happy. He wanted you to be safe. This is getting dangerous. You can't stay here with your siblings stirring up this kind of hatred." He was right. I knew he was right. But leaving felt like surrender. And I'd done enough surrendering for one lifetime. "Give me 2 weeks," I said. "Just 2 weeks to get things in order, and then we'll go." Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but he just pulled me close instead. 2 weeks. And then we start our actual life together, okay? Okay. But the universe had other plans. 3 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Miss Hartwell? This is Detective Sarah Morrison with the County District Attorney's Office. We need to talk about some financial irregularities regarding your father's estate." My blood ran cold. "What kind of irregularities?" "The reverse mortgage on your father's house. We've received allegations that the documents may have been fraudulent. Can you come down to the station?" Daniel. That son of a bitch had reported me for the very fraud he'd committed. "Of course," I said. "When?" "This afternoon, if possible." 3 o'clock. I agreed and hung up, my mind racing. This was it, the moment when everything either came together or fell apart completely. I called Richard immediately. "They're trying to flip it," he said after I explained. "Classic abuser tactic. Accuse the victim of the crime you committed. Can they make it stick?" "Not if we have the evidence." "And we have the evidence. Your father documented everything. Every conversation with Daniel, every authorization Daniel claimed to have but didn't. We can prove he forged your father's signature on those reverse mortgage documents. So what do I do? You go to that meeting. You tell the truth. And you let me do the rest." The police station smelled like bad coffee and industrial cleaner. Detective Morrison was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She led me to an interview room and gestured for me to sit. "Thank you for coming in," she said. "I want to be clear, you're not under arrest or even officially being investigated. We're just trying to understand what happened with this reverse mortgage." "I understand. Your brother Daniel filed a report claiming you forged your father's signature on estate documents in order to inherit the bulk of the estate. He's alleging financial elder abuse." "My brother is lying." Detective Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Can you prove that?" "Yes. My father's attorney has documentation showing that Daniel, not me, forged the reverse mortgage documents. Daniel had limited power of attorney for bill-paying purposes only. He used it to take out a $300,000 loan against my father's house without proper authorization." I pulled out the folder Richard had given me. Bank statements. Copies of the power of attorney document with its specific limitations. Recordings of Dad explicitly stating he hadn't authorized the reverse mortgage. Expert analysis of the signatures showing they didn't match Dad's hand tremors from his disease. Detective Morrison went through everything methodically. An hour passed. Then another. Finally, she looked up. "Miss Hartwell, this is enough to open an investigation into your brother, not you. I'm sorry you were brought in under false pretenses." Relief flooded through me. "So I'm free to go?" "Yes. But I'll need to speak with your father's attorney and potentially with you again as we investigate your brother's actions." "Of course. Whatever you need." I walked out of that police station into the afternoon sunshine, and for the first time in a week, I could breathe. My phone rang. "Marcus. How did it go?" "They're investigating Daniel, not me." "Thank God." He paused. "And I need to tell you something. Your sister showed up at my office today." My stomach dropped. "What?" "She wanted to talk about you. About how worried she is. How she thinks you're having some kind of breakdown and need help." His voice was tight with anger. "She suggested I might want to consider having you evaluated for mental competency. Said she had a lawyer who could help me. She was trying to get you to turn against me." "Yeah, well, she miscalculated." "I told her if she ever contacted me again, I'd file a harassment complaint. Then I had security escort her out." I started laughing. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all, Victoria flying to Seattle to try to turn my husband against me, Daniel filing false police reports, both of them so desperate to discredit me that they were destroying themselves in the process. "What's so funny?" Marcus asked. "Dad was right. He said they'd show me exactly who they were, and they are. They're so much worse than I ever imagined." "Are you okay?" Was I okay? I was standing outside a police station where I'd just cleared my name of fraud allegations filed by my own brother. My sister was trying to have me declared mentally incompetent. My childhood home had been vandalized. The entire town was gossiping about me. And I had $500 million, a husband who loved me, and proof of every terrible thing my siblings had done. "Yeah," I said, surprising myself. "Yeah, I think I actually am." "Good. Because I have news. Remember that partnership track I mentioned?" "Yeah." I turned it down. "Marcus, what?" "Why?" "Because I realized something. I've spent 6 years building my career while you sacrificed yours. Now it's your turn. Whatever you want to do next, wherever you want to go, I'm following you. We're partners. Equal partners. And it's time I started acting like it." I stood there on the sidewalk, phone pressed to my ear, and felt something shift inside me. For 6 years, I'd been the one making sacrifices, putting my life on hold, waiting for someday. Someday was here. "Come home," I said. "Come home, and let's figure out what we're going to do with the rest of our lives." I'm already packing. That night, I sat in Dad's room, my room now, though I still thought of it as his, and made a list. Things I needed to do. Finish Dad's charitable foundation plans. Hire the team Richard recommended. Decide what to do with the house. Figure out what I actually wanted to do with my life. Deal with Victoria and Daniel. That last one was the hardest. Because despite everything, despite the cruelty and the betrayal and the public humiliation, they were still my siblings. We'd grown up together. We'd shared parents and holidays and 1,000 childhood memories. But Dad's letter echoed in my mind, "Forgive them eventually if you can. But take your time. You've earned the right to be angry first." I wasn't ready to forgive yet. But I was ready to stop letting them define me. I pulled out my laptop and started drafting an email. Not to Victoria or Daniel, but to the journalist who'd written that article about caregiver abuse. I attached copies of everything: the evidence of Daniel's fraud, the documentation of their neglect, the recordings of them mocking Dad and me. Then I wrote, "You wrote about financial elder abuse without knowing the full story. Here's what actually happened. Here's what the victims you interviewed actually did to their father. Here's the truth. I'm not asking you to write a retraction. I'm just asking you to tell the whole story." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The article ran a week later. The inheritance battle that exposed family neglect, how two siblings tried to frame their caretaker sister. It included everything: the reverse mortgage fraud, the stolen money, the 12 years of absence, the documented evidence of their greed. Victoria called me screaming. I let it go to voicemail. Daniel left a threatening message about lawsuits. I forwarded it to Richard. And the court of public opinion, which had been so ready to condemn me, slowly started to shift. Because people understood sacrifice. They understood showing up. They understood the difference between someone who gave everything and people who only took. The hate mail stopped. The spray paint on the garage was cleaned off by neighbors who left apologetic notes. The reporters stopped calling. And I could finally breathe. Marcus moved back home 2 weeks later, and we started the process of building our life together. Really together, for the first time in 6 years. He helped me sort through Dad's belongings, deciding what to keep and what to donate. We turned Dad's room back into a regular bedroom, packing away the medical equipment that had defined so much of my life. Richard assembled my team: a financial advisor, an accountant, a lawyer specializing in patent law, and a director for Dad's charitable foundation. We held weekly meetings to discuss the estate, the patents, the investments. I was learning a new language: capital gains, portfolio diversification, royalty structures, foundation bylaws. It was overwhelming and exhausting, and sometimes I wanted to just hand it all over to someone else to manage. But then I'd remember Dad's late-night lessons, the way he'd patiently explained each concept until I understood. He'd prepared me for this. He'd believed I could do it. So I pushed through the learning curve and started making decisions. The house was the hardest decision. Marcus and I talked about it endlessly. We could keep it, he said one night as we lay in bed in the room where I'd grown up. Rent it out or use it as a vacation home. Or we could sell it and use the money for the foundation. Is that what you want? I thought about it. This house held so many memories: my whole childhood, 6 years of caregiving, Mom's death, Dad's death. Pain and love tangled together until I couldn't separate them. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to hold on to it because it's all I have left of them. But another part of me thinks, maybe I need to let it go. Maybe I need to start fresh. We don't have to decide right now. But life had other plans. The break-in happened 3 weeks after the article ran. Marcus and I had gone to Seattle for the weekend to look at apartments, to start imagining what our life there might look like. We came home Sunday evening to find the back door smashed in, glass everywhere, the house ransacked. They'd gone through everything. Drawers dumped, cabinets opened, furniture overturned. Mom's jewelry box was smashed open, though the jewelry itself was all costume pieces worth nothing. Dad's office was destroyed, papers everywhere, files pulled apart, his computer missing. "Call the police," Marcus said, his voice tight. I did. They came, took statements, dusted for fingerprints. The officer, a young guy who looked fresh out of the academy, asked the obvious question: "Is anything valuable missing?" "I don't know yet," I said. "We just got home." It took hours to assess the damage. The computer was gone. An old tablet. Some cash I'd kept in a drawer for emergencies. Mom's wedding ring, which had real value, both monetary and sentimental. But the worst thing, the thing that made me physically sick when I realized it was gone, was a box of letters. Letters Mom had written to Dad over the years. Letters Dad had written to me during the 6 years of his illness, painstakingly dictated or spelled out letter by letter. Letters from my childhood, my grandparents, old friends, things I'd saved because they mattered. All gone. Who would take letters? I said, staring at the empty box. They're not worth anything to anyone but me. Marcus was looking at the destruction with an expression I'd never seen before. This wasn't random, Em. This was personal. The police officer clearing his throat. Ma'am, I have to ask, do you have any enemies? Anyone who might want to hurt you specifically? I laughed, and it came out bitter and broken. You mean besides my siblings? His expression shifted. Your siblings. So I explained. The whole story, including the article and the court of public opinion turning against Victoria and Daniel. The officer took notes, his expression growing more concerned. We'll look into it, he said. But I have to be honest, without evidence, there's not much we can do. They left. Marcus and I stood in the wreckage of my childhood home, and I felt something inside me finally break. I can't do this anymore, I said. I can't keep fighting them. I can't keep living in this house where everything reminds me of what I lost. I can't keep trying to hold on to something that's already gone. Marcus pulled me close. Then we don't. We sell the house. We move to Seattle. We start completely over. But Dad wanted me to have this house. Your dad wanted you to be happy. Do you think he'd want you living in a place that's been violated like this? That's become a target because of money he left you. He was right. God, he was right. Okay, I whispered into his chest. Okay, let's sell it. We listed the house the next day. I couldn't bear to stay there anymore, so we moved into a hotel while the real estate agent handled showings. Within a week, we had an offer. A young couple with 2 kids, looking for their forever home. I signed the papers without reading them too closely, just wanting it done. The house sold for $850,000. After paying off the reverse mortgage and the remaining medical debt, there was $450,000 left. I donated it all to Dad's foundation. I didn't need it. I had more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. And keeping it felt like holding on to pain. We were packing up the last of our belongings when Victoria showed up. I hadn't seen her since the will reading 2 months ago. She looked terrible, thinner, her hair dull, her expensive clothes hanging loose. She stood on the front porch and, for a moment, we just stared at each other. Can I come in? She asked. Everything in me wanted to say no. But Marcus was upstairs, and I wasn't afraid of her. Not anymore. The house is sold, I said instead of answering. We're moving next week. I know. That's why I came. She twisted her hands together. Emily, please. Can we just talk? Against my better judgment, I let her in. We sat in the living room, now empty of furniture except for 2 folding chairs the movers had left. The house echoed strangely, all the warmth stripped away. I'm sorry, Victoria said. For everything. For not being here, for the things I said, for trying to turn Marcus against you. I'm sorry. I waited. Because I'd learned that apologies mean nothing without changed behavior. I was jealous, she continued. Of you. Of the relationship you had with Dad that I never managed to build. And when I found out about the money, about how much he'd hidden from everyone, I felt like he'd chosen you over me. Like I'd failed some test I didn't even know I was taking. You did fail, I said quietly. The test was, show up. Love without expecting anything in return. Put someone else first, just once. You failed because you never even tried. She flinched. I know. Do you? Because you didn't just abandon Dad. You abandoned me. For 6 years, I begged for help. I asked you to visit, to call, to just acknowledge how hard it was. And you treated me like I was pathetic for staying. Like sacrificing for family made me weak. I was wrong. Yes, you were. But you know what the worst part is? You're not even sorry you hurt me. You're sorry you lost the money. If Dad had left you $500 million and me $10,000, you wouldn't be here apologizing. You'd be counting your fortune and feeling justified that the family failure finally got what she deserved. Victoria started crying. That's not true. Yes, it is. And we both know it. I stood up. You need to leave. Marcus and I are moving to Seattle, and I don't want any contact with you or Daniel. You're not welcome in my life anymore. Emily, please. No. I'm done. I spent 6 years hoping you'd change, that you'd show up, that you'd prove you cared about something other than yourself. You never did. So now I'm protecting myself by cutting you out completely. You can't mean that. We're sisters. No, we're not. Sisters show up for each other. What we are is strangers who share DNA. I walked to the door and opened it. Goodbye, Victoria. She left, sobbing. I watched her get in her car and drive away, and I felt nothing. No sadness, no anger, no regret. Just a strange, hollow emptiness where family love used to be. Marcus came downstairs as her car disappeared around the corner. You okay? No. But I will be. We finished packing that night. The movers came the next morning to load everything into the truck. I walked through the empty house one last time, saying goodbye to the rooms where I'd grown up, where I'd cared for Dad, where I'd learned what love really meant. And then I locked the door and walked away. Seattle was supposed to be our fresh start. Our clean slate. The place where Emily the caregiver became Emily the something else. But I had no idea what that something else was. Marcus had rented us a beautiful apartment in Capitol Hill while we looked for a permanent place. Floor-to-ceiling windows, though I tried not to think about those words anymore, and a view of the Space Needle. It should have felt exciting. It should have felt like freedom. Instead, it just felt empty. I didn't know how to be a person anymore. For 6 years, my entire identity had been Dad's caregiver. Every decision I made, every plan I had, every hour of every day was structured around his needs. Now he was gone and I was who? Marcus tried to help. He took me to museums, to restaurants, to shows. Trying to reconnect me with the girl who'd loved art and culture, who'd had opinions and passions and dreams. But that girl was gone. And I didn't know how to become someone new. The nightmares started 3 weeks after we moved. Dad calling for me, needing help, and I couldn't find him. Mom dying over and over while I stood frozen. Victoria and Daniel standing over me, laughing, while I tried to explain that I'd earned it, I'd earned all of it. I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, and Marcus would hold me until I could breathe again. You need to talk to someone, he said after a particularly bad night. A therapist. Someone who can help you process everything. I'm fine. You're having panic attacks. You're not sleeping. You barely eat. You're not fine. He was right. Of course he was right. I found a therapist who specialized in caregiver trauma. Dr. Patricia Chin, no relation to Marcus, though we joked about it. She was in her 60s, calm and steady, and she didn't push me to talk about things I wasn't ready to discuss. Tell me about your father, she said in our first session. So I did. I told her about the diagnosis, the decline, the 6 years of watching someone I loved disappear piece by piece. I told her about the isolation, the grief, the way my siblings' abandonment had hurt worse than anything else. And then I told her about the money. $500 million, she said, her expression unreadable. That's significant. I don't even know what to do with it. I've started the foundation, but there's so much left. And everyone keeps asking me what I want to do next, what my plans are, and I have no idea. I don't know who I am without caregiving. I don't know what I want. What did you want 6 years ago? To work in a gallery. To be around art. To build a life with Marcus. I paused. Simple things. Normal things. And now? Now those things feel too small for someone with this much money. Like I should want to change the world or start a company or do something important. But I don't even know what important means anymore. Dr. Chin leaned back in her chair. Emily, you spent 6 years doing something incredibly important. You showed up for someone who needed you. That's not small. That's enormous. And the fact that you're wealthy now doesn't change what matters to you. It just gives you resources to pursue it. So, what do I pursue? What do you miss about the work you did before? I thought about the gallery. The quiet afternoons surrounded by beautiful things. The conversations with artists about their process. The way I'd felt when I'd helped someone connect with a piece that spoke to them. I miss being around art, I said slowly. I miss helping people see beauty. Then start there. It was so simple. So obvious. But in the chaos of wealth and family drama and public scrutiny, I'd forgotten that my dreams didn't have to be complicated. I started visiting galleries. Small ones, local ones, places where artists were struggling to get their work seen. I didn't tell anyone who I was or what I had. I just looked and listened and remembered what it felt like to care about something besides medical schedules and medication dosages. One gallery in particular caught my attention. It was in a struggling neighborhood, run by a woman named Jordan who was trying to showcase local artists, but could barely afford rent. The art was incredible, raw and honest, and full of the kind of emotion I'd been drowning in for years. I went back 3 times before I introduced myself. I'd like to help, I told Jordan. I have some money to invest, and I think what you're doing here matters. How much money are we talking? She asked, suspicious. People in struggling neighborhoods learn not to trust too good to be true offers. Enough to buy this building and turn it into a proper gallery space. Enough to pay artists fairly for their work. Enough to run programs for kids who want to learn about art but can't afford classes. Jordan stared at me. Who are you? Someone who used to work in a gallery in another life. Someone who wants to remember what it feels like to care about something beautiful. We shook hands. And just like that, I had a project. Something that was mine, something that mattered to me, something that had nothing to do with caregiving or obligation or family drama. I threw myself into it. Learning about gallery management, about the art market, about community programming. Marcus helped when he could, but this was mine. My passion, my dream, my way forward. 3 months after moving to Seattle, I was starting to feel like a person again. And then Daniel got arrested. The call came from Detective Morrison, the same one who'd investigated the reverse mortgage fraud. Ms. Hartwell, I wanted to let you know that we've arrested your brother on charges of forgery, fraud, and financial elder abuse. The evidence you provided was crucial to building our case. I sat down heavily. When? This morning. His trial will probably be in 6 months. You may be called to testify. Okay, there's something else. During our investigation, we discovered that your brother had been planning to file a fraudulent lawsuit against you. He'd fabricated evidence, recruited witnesses willing to lie for money. If we hadn't arrested him when we did, you would have been facing a major legal battle. My hands were shaking. He really hates me that much. I think he hates that you won, Miss Hartwell. And people like your brother can't stand losing. After she hung up, I sat in my beautiful apartment with its view of the Space Needle and cried. Not for Daniel, not for the brother he'd never really been. But for the family I'd thought I had, the one that had never actually existed. Marcus found me there an hour later. Daniel's been arrested, I said. He pulled me close. Good. Is it? I mean, he's still my brother. Shouldn't I feel bad that he's going to prison? Do you? I thought about it honestly. No, I don't. Is that terrible? It's human. He tried to destroy you, multiple times. You're allowed to be glad he's facing consequences. Victoria's going to blame me. Let her. And she did. She called that night, screaming about how I'd destroyed Daniel's life, how the family would never recover, how I was a vindictive bitch who'd turned into everything I claimed to hate. I listened for exactly 30 seconds before hanging up. Then I blocked her number. Dr. Chen had been right. Forgiveness could come later, maybe. But for now, I was choosing myself. Choosing my peace. Choosing the life I was building with Marcus and the gallery and the foundation. Choosing to stop letting people who'd hurt me continue to have power over my happiness. It felt like the first truly free choice I'd made in years. Daniel's trial was scheduled for April, 6 months after his arrest. 6 months where I tried to focus on building my new life, while the legal system slowly ground through the evidence of his crimes. The gallery was thriving. We'd renamed it the Morrison Gallery, after Mom, a small way of honoring her memory with something beautiful. Jordan and I had found our rhythm as partners. She handled the artistic side while I managed the business operations and funding. We'd already showcased 15 local artists, sold dozens of pieces, and started a free youth art program that had 30 kids enrolled. For the first time since I was 23, I felt like I had purpose beyond obligation. But the trial loomed over everything like a storm cloud I couldn't escape. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Reeves who specialized in family law and elder abuse cases, met with me regularly to prepare for testimony. They're going to try to paint you as manipulative, she warned during one of our sessions. Daniel's lawyer will argue that you isolated your father, controlled his access to family, and used your position as caregiver to unduly influence his decisions. But I have evidence. Evidence helps, but trials are also about narrative. They'll tell a story about a scheming daughter who saw an opportunity and took it. We need to tell a better story about a devoted daughter who sacrificed everything while her siblings abandoned their father. That's not a story. That's what happened. I know, but we need to make the jury feel it. I spent hours with Patricia, going through every detail of those 6 years. Every doctor's appointment I'd attended alone. Every holiday Victoria and Daniel had missed. Every promise they'd broken. Every time they'd taken money and run. It was exhausting, reliving it all. But it was also clarifying. Because seeing it laid out like that, documented and itemized and proven, made it impossible to doubt myself. I hadn't been crazy. I hadn't been paranoid. My siblings really had abandoned us, and Dad really had noticed. The prosecution's case was solid. The forged documents. The misappropriated funds. The recorded conversations where Dad explicitly stated he hadn't authorized Daniel's actions. Expert witnesses who testified about the signature analysis, about Dad's mental competency, about the legal requirements for power of attorney. But Daniel's defense was vicious. His lawyer was a man named Robert Harding, expensive and ruthless. He'd built his career on defending white-collar criminals and knew exactly how to create reasonable doubt. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he said in his opening statement, "this case isn't about whether Daniel Hartwell made mistakes in managing his father's affairs. It's about a family destroyed by greed. My client's sister, Emily, systematically alienated their father from his other children, controlled every aspect of his life, and manipulated a dying man into leaving her a fortune while cutting out his other children almost entirely." I sat in the courtroom, Marcus on one side and Patricia on the other, and listened to them rewrite history. According to Harding's narrative, I was a calculating manipulator who'd seen an opportunity when Dad got sick. I'd convinced him that Victoria and Daniel didn't care about him, screening their calls and visits, lying about their attempts to stay involved. I'd made Dad dependent on me emotionally and physically so that he'd have no choice but to trust my version of reality. "Emily Hartwell isn't a devoted daughter," Harding said, his voice dripping with disdain. "She's a con artist who spent 6 years running a long game. And when that game paid off to the tune of $500 million, she turned on her own brother to cover her tracks. It was masterful. Completely false, but masterful." And I could see some of the jurors nodding along. When it was my turn to testify, I took the stand with my heart pounding. Patricia had coached me extensively. Stay calm, answer only what's asked, don't let them provoke you, tell the truth clearly and simply. The prosecution went first. They asked me about Dad's diagnosis, about the care he'd needed, about Victoria and Daniel's involvement, or lack thereof. I told them everything. The missed visits. The broken promises. The money they'd taken. The years I'd spent alone, caring for Dad while they built their careers. "Did you ever prevent your siblings from visiting your father?" the prosecutor asked. "Never. I would have been grateful for the help." "Did you manipulate your father into changing his will?" "No. I didn't even know about most of his wealth until after Mom died. Dad made his own decisions about who deserved his legacy." Then it was Harding's turn. "Ms. Hartwell, you testified that you would have been grateful for help from your siblings. But isn't it true that you repeatedly told them you had everything under control?" I said that because they kept using his condition as an excuse not to visit. I was trying to make it easy for them to show up. "Or were you trying to maintain sole control over your father's care, and therefore his decisions?" "No. Isn't it true that you moved your father's phone away from his bed, making it difficult for him to call family members?" "I moved it because he kept trying to answer it himself and would fall. He had a call button that alerted me if he needed anything. A call button that you controlled. That only reached you. Because I was his caregiver. His isolated caregiver, with no oversight, no witnesses to most of your interactions, and convenient recordings that only documented what you wanted documented." Patricia objected. The judge sustained it. But the damage was done. Harding had planted the seed of doubt. He kept hammering away. Why had I been the only one present when Dad changed his will? Why hadn't I told my siblings about the extent of Dad's wealth before he died? Why had I immediately moved to Seattle after inheriting, fleeing, before anyone could question the will's validity? "Miss Hartwell, Isn't it true that you saw your father's illness as an opportunity? An opportunity to secure your financial future by becoming indispensable to a dying man. That's not no. I loved my father. Everything I did was out of love. Love that happened to pay extremely well. Objection. Patricia was on her feet. Withdrawn, Harding said smoothly. No further questions. I stepped down from the witness stand feeling like I'd been flayed alive. Marcus squeezed my hand as I sat back down, but I could barely feel it. All I could feel was the doubt in the jury's eyes, the questions Harding had planted. What if they believed him? What if they decided I was the villain in this story? The trial lasted 3 weeks. Witness after witness testified. The doctors who'd treated Dad confirmed his mental competency and that I'd never tried to isolate him from family. The financial experts explained how Daniel had forged documents. The neighbors testified about Victoria and Daniel's years-long absence. But Harding was good at his job. He cast doubt on everything, suggesting that I'd coached witnesses, that the neighbors were biased in my favor, that the medical experts couldn't really know what happened in private moments. Reasonable doubt, Patricia reminded me during a break. That's all he needs. He doesn't have to prove Daniel's innocent. He just has to make the jury unsure. Finally, closing arguments. The prosecution laid out the evidence methodically. The forged signatures. The misappropriated funds. The clear documentation of Daniel's fraud. Then Harding stood up. Ladies and gentlemen, my client made mistakes. He'll be the first to admit that. He signed documents without proper authorization. He made financial decisions that, in hindsight, were questionable. But those mistakes were made in the context of a family in crisis, where his father was dying and his sister had assumed total control. The real question isn't whether Daniel Hartwell made errors in judgment. The question is whether those errors constitute criminal fraud, or whether they were the actions of a desperate son trying to help his father while being systematically excluded by his sister. Emily Hartwell wants you to believe she's the victim here. The selfless caregiver who sacrificed everything while her siblings neglected their father. But I ask you to consider another possibility, that she's the architect of her own narrative. That she spent 6 years isolating her father, controlling information, and positioning herself as the only person he could trust. And when that strategy paid off to the tune of $500 million, she needed a villain. Someone to blame. Someone to destroy, so that no one would question how a gallery assistant with no business experience suddenly became one of the wealthiest women in the state. Daniel Hartwell is that convenient villain. And I'm asking you not to let Emily Hartwell's carefully constructed story blind you to reasonable doubt. The jury deliberated for 2 days. 2 days where I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything except the possibility that Daniel might walk free. That the jury might decide I was the real criminal, that I'd somehow stolen my own inheritance. Marcus tried to distract me. Patricia reassured me that the evidence was solid. Dr. Chin reminded me that whatever happened, I knew the truth. But none of it helped. Because I'd learned over the past year that truth didn't always matter. That people could twist anything into any narrative they wanted. That being innocent didn't guarantee justice. On the 3rd day, we got the call. The jury had reached a verdict. We rushed to the courthouse. The courtroom was packed journalists, family members, curious onlookers who'd followed the case. I saw Victoria sitting in the back row, her face pale and drawn. Daniel sat at the defense table, looking confident. He dressed in an expensive suit, his hair perfectly styled, playing the role of successful businessman wrongly accused. The jury filed in. I tried to read their faces, but they were carefully neutral. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge asked. We have, Your Honor. The forewoman stood. She was a middle-aged black woman who'd taken copious notes throughout the trial. She looked at Daniel, then at the judge, then read from a paper in her hand. On the count of forgery, we find the defendant guilty. My breath caught. On the count of financial fraud, we find the defendant guilty. Victoria gasped audibly. On the count of elder abuse, we find the defendant guilty. Daniel's confident expression crumbled. Guilty. On all counts. The judge set sentencing for 6 weeks later and dismissed the court. Daniel was led away in handcuffs, his lawyer already talking about appeals. Victoria ran out of the courtroom, sobbing. And I sat there, numb. Marcus touched my shoulder. You okay? I don't know. I thought I'd feel something. Relief, maybe. Vindication. But I just feel empty. Patricia gathered her files. That's normal. You've been fighting this for so long that winning feels anticlimactic. Give it time. The feeling will come. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Cameras flashing, microphones thrust in my face, everyone shouting questions. Miss Hartwell, how do you feel about your brother's conviction? Do you plan to pursue charges against your sister as well? What message does this send to other caregivers dealing with family conflict? Patricia had coached me on this too. Brief statement, no questions, walk away. I'm grateful for justice, I said, my voice steady despite my shaking hands. My father deserved better than what my brother did. All I ever wanted was to honor Dad's wishes and protect his legacy. Thank you. We pushed through the crowd to Marcus's car. He drove us home in silence while I stared out the window, watching the city blur past. When we got back to the apartment, I went straight to the bedroom and collapsed onto the bed, fully clothed. Marcus lay down next to me. Talk to me. I won. Why don't I feel like I won? Because winning a trial doesn't erase what they put you through. It doesn't give you back the 6 years you lost or make your family whole again. It's just justice. Which matters, but it's not the same as healing. He was right. Daniel going to prison didn't fix anything. It didn't make Victoria sorry. It didn't bring back Mom and Dad. It didn't give me back the girl I'd been before all this started. I don't know how to move forward, I whispered. The trial is over, Daniel's going to prison. The gallery is doing well. The foundation is launched. I should be happy. I should feel successful. But I just feel lost. Then maybe it's time to stop trying to feel how you think you should feel and just sit with what is. You're grieving. You're processing trauma. You're rebuilding your entire identity. That's not going to happen overnight. How long did you wait for me, Marcus? 6 years. And now I'm here, but I'm not the person you waited for. What if I never become her again? He rolled over to face me. I didn't wait for the girl you were at 23. I waited for you. Whoever you are, whoever you become. That's what marriage means. That's what love means. I started crying then. Really crying, the kind of deep, body-shaking sobs that I'd been holding back for months. Crying for my parents, for the family I'd never really had, for the years I'd lost, for the innocence that was gone forever. Marcus held me through all of it, and when I finally had no tears left, he was still there. I love you, I said, my voice raw. I love you too. And we're going to figure this out. Together. Daniel's sentencing was 6 weeks later. He got 8 years, less than the maximum, but more than the minimum. His lawyer argued for leniency based on his lack of prior criminal history and his successful career. The prosecution argued for the maximum based on the severity of his crimes and the betrayal of family trust. 8 years felt like both too much and not enough. Victoria sent me an email after the sentencing. One line. I hope you're happy now. I deleted it without responding. Dr. Chin and I talked through all of it in therapy. The trial, the verdict, the strange emptiness I felt instead of triumph. You've been in survival mode for 7 years, she said. 6 years of caregiving, then a year of fighting your siblings. Now that the fight is over, your brain doesn't know what to do. It's been in crisis mode for so long that peace feels wrong. So what do? You learn to live without crisis. You find purpose that isn't about survival. You build a life based on what you want, not what you have to do. It sounded so simple. So obvious. It was also terrifying. Because I'd gotten good at crisis. I knew how to handle emergencies, how to push through exhaustion, how to keep going when everything was falling apart. What I didn't know was how to simply exist. Without fighting, without defending myself, without proving my worth. The Morrison Gallery became my anchor. Working with Jordan, helping artists, building programs for kids who needed art the way I once had, it gave me structure and purpose. And unlike caregiving, it was purpose I'd chosen, not purpose that had been thrust upon me. One day, about 2 months after the sentencing, a teenage girl came into the gallery. She was maybe 16, wearing worn-out clothes and carrying a portfolio that was held together with duct tape. "Can I help you?" I asked. "I heard you have programs for kids who want to learn about art," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Is that true, or is it just something you say?" "It's true. We have classes 3 times a week, and they're completely free." "Why?" "Because someone once told me that art saved their life. And I want to give that chance to as many people as possible." She looked at me then, really looked at me. "Can I show you something?" She opened her portfolio. Inside were drawings raw, emotional, stunningly good. Figures twisted in pain, faces expressing depths of grief and rage and hope. The work of someone who'd seen too much too young and was trying to process it through art. "These are incredible," I said honestly. "Really? You're not just saying that." "Really. Have you had any formal training?" "No. Just YouTube videos and library books. My mom says art isn't a real career, that I should focus on practical things. But art is the only thing that makes sense to me." I saw myself in her. The girl I'd been at her age, falling in love with art, believing it could matter. The girl I'd been before crisis and caregiving reshaped me into someone different. "What's your name?" I asked. "Jasmine." "Jasmine, how would you like to be our first artist in residence? It's a new program we're starting. You'd work in the gallery, learn from Jordan and me, develop your skills, and eventually have your own show. There's a small stipend that comes with it." Her eyes went wide. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. If you're interested, we can set up a meeting with your parents to explain the program." She hugged me, just threw her arms around me and held on tight, this stranger girl who needed someone to believe in her the way Dad had believed in me. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." After she left, Jordan found me crying in the office. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. I just realized why I'm here. Why I survived everything, Dad's death, the trial, all of it. So I could help kids like her. So I could be the person for someone else that I needed someone to be for me." Jordan smiled. "Took you long enough to figure it out." That night, I told Marcus about Jasmine, about the realization I'd had. He listened with a smile that grew wider as I talked. "What?" I asked. "You're back." "What do you mean?" "The Emily I fell in love with. The one who got excited about art and believed she could make a difference. She's been hiding for a long time, but she's back." He was right. Somewhere in the past few months, without me noticing, I'd started becoming a person again instead of just a role. Not the girl I'd been at 23, that girl was gone. But someone new. Someone shaped by pain but not defined by it. Someone who'd survived. Spring came to Seattle, bringing rain and cherry blossoms and the kind of light that makes everything look fresh and possible. The gallery was thriving. Jasmine was flourishing in the Artist-in-Residence program. Dad's foundation had funded 3 major medical research projects and was providing support to 50 family caregivers across the state. I was healing. Slowly, imperfectly, but healing. And then Victoria showed up at the gallery. I was in the back office, reviewing applications for a new batch of youth program participants, when Jordan knocked on the door. "Em? Your sister's here." My stomach dropped. "Tell her I'm not available." I tried. "She says she'll wait." Of course she would. I found her standing in the main gallery space, looking at a series of paintings by one of our artists, a woman who'd lost her mother to Alzheimer's and processed her grief through abstract landscapes that felt like memories dissolving. "These are beautiful," Victoria said without turning around. She looked terrible. Thinner than at the trial, her clothes expensive but hanging loose, her hair dull despite professional styling. "What do you want, Victoria?" She turned to face me. "To apologize. Really apologize, not the half-hearted attempt I made before. I'm not interested in apologies." "I know. But I need to say it anyway." She took a breath. "You were right about everything. I was jealous, I was selfish, I abandoned Dad when he needed me. I spent 6 years telling myself it was okay because I had a career, because Daniel was the responsible son, because you seemed to have it under control. But the truth is, I was scared. Scared of watching Dad die, scared of feeling helpless, scared of being the kind of person who stays when it's hard. So you became the kind of person who leaves." Yes. And I've had a year to live with that choice. To watch Daniel go to prison for fraud while I got away with just being a terrible daughter. To realize that Dad left me $10,000 not because he wanted to punish me, but because that's all he thought I'd earned. And he was right. I waited. Because I'd learned that people often apologize when they want something, and I wanted to know what Victoria's endgame was. I'm not here to ask for money, she said, reading my silence correctly. Or to ask you to drop charges. There are no charges against me. I'm just here to say I'm sorry. For all of it. And to tell you that I'm proud of you. Of what you did for Dad and what you're doing now. This gallery, the foundation, Dad would be so proud. My throat was tight. Don't what? Don't try to connect with me through Dad. You don't get to use his memory to make yourself feel better about how you treated him. Victoria flinched. You're right. I'm sorry. I miss him. And I miss you. I miss having a sister. You never had me as a sister, Victoria. You had me as someone to use when convenient and mock when it wasn't. That's not sisterhood. I know. But could it be? Could we try? I'm in therapy now. I'm working on being less selfish, less scared. I'm trying to become someone Dad would have been proud of, even if it's too late for him to see it. I looked at this woman who shared my DNA but little else. This stranger who'd hurt me repeatedly and was now asking for forgiveness I wasn't sure I could give. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know if I have it in me to trust you again. I understand. But maybe we could start small? Coffee sometimes? Phone calls? I'm not asking for everything back. Just a chance to prove I can be better. It was the impossible choice. The one I'd been avoiding since Dad's funeral. Hold on to the anger that protected me, or risk the vulnerability of letting someone back in who'd already proven they could hurt me. I need to think about it, I said finally. Okay. Victoria pulled out a business card, wrote something on the back. This is my therapist's number. If you ever want to do a joint session, to talk through things with a professional present, she said she'd be willing. No pressure. Just an option. She set the card on the reception desk and walked toward the door. Then she paused. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I was terrible. But I really am proud of you. You're a better person than I'll ever be, and Dad knew it. That's why he left you everything. Not to punish Daniel and me, but because he knew you'd use it to build something beautiful. She left before I could respond. I stood there in the gallery, surrounded by art that spoke of grief and survival and transformation, and realized I had a choice to make. I could hold on to the anger that had kept me strong through the trial, the righteous fury that had protected me from more hurt. Or I could risk opening myself up to the possibility that people could change, that Victoria might genuinely be trying to become someone different. Neither option was safe. Anger would isolate me but protect me. Forgiveness would open me up but risk more pain. That night, I talked it through with Marcus. What do you think I should do? I asked. I think you should do what feels right for you, not what you think you should do. That's not helpful. He smiled. Okay, you want my real opinion? I think Victoria's probably genuine. The trial devastated her, not just because Daniel went to prison, but because she had to confront who she really was. That kind of reckoning either breaks people or changes them. But what if she hurts me again? Then you walk away again. You're not the same person you were a year ago. You're not helpless or trapped or dependent on your family's approval. If Victoria proves she hasn't really changed, you have the strength to cut her off. You've already done it once. He was right. I wasn't the scared, exhausted caregiver anymore. I was someone who'd survived the worst and built something beautiful from the ashes. I could risk this. The next day, I called the number on Victoria's card. Her therapist's name was Dr. Sarah Patel, and she had warm voice and a straightforward manner. Victoria mentioned you might call. I want to be clear, I'm Victoria's therapist, so I'm not neutral. But I can facilitate a conversation between you two if you think it would be helpful. What's your professional opinion? Is she really changing, or is this just another manipulation? Dr. Patel was quiet for a moment. I can't speak to her past behavior, I only know what she's told me. But in the 6 months I've been working with her, I've seen genuine remorse and real effort to understand her own behavior patterns. Whether that translates to lasting change, That's up to Victoria to prove through consistent action over time. That's what I was afraid you'd say. Change is a process, not a destination. Victoria's working on becoming someone better. But you're under no obligation to be part of that journey if it doesn't serve you. I made an appointment for the following week. A joint session with Dr. Patel mediating, where Victoria and I could talk through everything with professional support. Marcus came with me for moral support, though he waited in the lobby during the session. Victoria was already there when I arrived, looking nervous. Dr. Patel's office was nothing like Dad's lawyer's office or the courtroom. It was soft and comfortable, with plants and soothing colors and tissues strategically placed. "Thank you for coming," Dr. Patel said. "I want to establish some ground rules. Both of you are here voluntarily. Either of you can leave at any time. The goal is honest conversation, not resolution, though if resolution happens, that's wonderful. Emily, would you like to start?" I looked at Victoria, who was crying already. "Why are you really here?" I asked. Not the apology speech. The real reason. Victoria wiped her eyes. "Because I'm alone. Mom's dead, Dad's dead, Daniel's in prison for 8 years. My marriage ended last year. My husband left me when the scandal hit. I don't have kids. I have a successful career that feels meaningless because there's no one to share it with. And the only family I have left is you, and I destroyed that relationship through my own selfishness. So you're here because you're lonely. I'm here because I finally understand what Dad tried to teach us and I was too stupid to learn. That people matter more than success. That showing up matters more than achievement. That love isn't what you feel, it's what you do." She looked at me directly. "You loved Dad through action. You showed up. And I didn't. And now he's gone, and I'll never get the chance to do better by him. But you're still here. And I'm asking for the chance to do better by you." It was raw and honest and exactly what I needed to hear. "If I let you back in," I said carefully, "it's going to be slow. Supervised visits, like this. Phone calls occasionally. I'm not ready for holidays or family dinners or pretending everything's okay. Whatever you're willing to give, I'll take. And if you hurt me again, if you use me or manipulate me or make me feel small, I'm done. Permanently. No second chances." "I understand." Dr. Patel smiled. "That sounds like a reasonable place to start." We met once a month for the next 6 months. Always in Dr. Patel's office, always with supervision. Victoria told me about her therapy work, about confronting the patterns she'd learned in childhood that had made her selfish and avoidant. I told her about the gallery, about Jasmine, about learning to be someone besides a caregiver. Slowly, carefully, we started building something that looked like a relationship. It wasn't sisterhood, not yet, maybe not ever. But it was connection. It was two people who'd survived the same trauma trying to find their way back to each other. In August, Victoria asked if she could visit the gallery. "Just to see it," she said quickly. "Not to be involved or anything. Just to see what you've built." I agreed. She came on a Saturday, when the youth program was in session. 15 kids aged 12 to 18, working on various projects under Jordan's supervision. Jasmine was helping the younger kids with their drawings, patient and encouraging. Victoria watched from the doorway, silent. "That girl," she said finally, pointing to Jasmine. "The one helping the little boy with his painting." "Who is she?" "Our artist in residence. She's incredibly talented. We're planning her first solo show for October. She looks at you the way you used to look at Dad." I glanced over. Jasmine had caught sight of me and was smiling, gesturing me over to see something one of the kids had made. "Yeah," I said. "I guess she does." "This is what you were meant to do," Victoria said softly. "Not wasting your life on Dad, he was never a waste. But this. Helping kids like her. Building something that matters. You're incredible, Em." I'm so sorry it took me this long to see it. It was the most genuine thing she'd ever said to me. That night, I talked to Dr. Chen about the visit. "How do you feel about Victoria now?" she asked. "I don't trust her completely. But I think maybe I could learn to. Eventually. If she keeps showing up. And if she doesn't? Then I'll be okay. Because I don't need her anymore. I'm not the girl who needed family approval to feel worthy. I've built my own life, my own purpose. Victoria can be part of it if she proves she deserves to be." But if she doesn't, I'll still be okay. Dr. Chen smiled. You've come a long way. I had. From the broken caregiver standing in Dad's lawyer's office to someone who'd built a life I was proud of. From someone who'd let her siblings define her worth to someone who knew her own value. The impossible choice had turned out not to be a choice at all. I could forgive Victoria while still protecting myself. I could give her a chance while maintaining boundaries. I could be open to connection without being vulnerable to destruction. I'd learned the hardest lesson, that loving people didn't mean letting them hurt you. That forgiveness didn't require trust. That healing didn't mean forgetting. And most importantly, that I was strong enough to hold all these complicated truths at once. Jasmine's solo show was scheduled for October 15th. We'd spent months preparing, selecting pieces, designing the layout, planning the opening reception. It was going to be the gallery's biggest event yet, and I was determined to make it perfect. 3 weeks before the opening, I got a call from an unknown number. Emily Hartwell? Yes. This is Amanda Chen from the Seattle Arts Foundation. We've been following your work at the Morrison Gallery, and we'd like to discuss a partnership opportunity. The Seattle Arts Foundation was one of the biggest arts organizations in the Pacific Northwest. They funded major exhibits, supported emerging artists, and had connections throughout the art world. I'm interested, I said carefully. What kind of partnership? We'd like to nominate the Morrison Gallery for our Community Impact Award. It comes with a $100,000 grant and significant publicity. But more importantly, we'd like to discuss expanding your youth program model to other cities. We think what you're doing could be replicated nationally. My hands were shaking. That's incredible. You're opening on the 15th, could we attend? We'd like to see the program in action before making our final decision. Of course. Absolutely. After we hung up, I sat in my office, staring at the phone. National expansion. Major publicity. Recognition for the work we'd been doing. Dad would have been so proud. I called Marcus first, then Jordan, then Dr. Chen. Everyone was thrilled. But there was one more person I wanted to tell. I called Victoria. Is everything okay? Everything's great. I have news. I told her about the Seattle Arts Foundation, about the potential national expansion. She screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Oh my God, That's amazing. I'm so proud of you. Thanks. The opening is October 15th. I know it's short notice, but would you want to come? To the opening? Silence. Then, quietly, really? You'd want me there? Yeah, I would. I'll be there. I promise. The weeks leading up to the opening were chaos. Jasmine was nervous about her work being displayed publicly. Jordan was perfecting every detail of the installation. I was managing logistics while simultaneously preparing for the foundation's evaluation. And Marcus was planning something, though he wouldn't tell me what. It's a surprise, he said when I asked. A good one. Trust me. The night before the opening, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the journey that had led here. From that devastated girl standing at Dad's funeral to the woman who'd built something meaningful from the ashes. You nervous? Marcus asked, finding me staring out the window at 3 a.m. Terrified. What if the foundation people hate it? What if no one comes? What if Jasmine's work doesn't sell? Then we regroup and try again. But none of that's going to happen. You've built something special here. People are going to see that. The day of the opening was perfect, clear skies, mild temperature, that particular October light that makes everything look magical. The gallery looked stunning. Jasmine's work was displayed beautifully, each piece telling a story of pain transformed into beauty. People started arriving at 6. Local artists, community members, some of the kids from our youth program with their families. The reporters covering the event. The Seattle Arts Foundation representatives, including Amanda Chen and 2 board members. And Victoria. She arrived early, dressed elegantly but not ostentatiously, carrying a bouquet of flowers. For Jasmine, she explained. For her first show. I remember my first big presentation at work. I was terrified. I thought maybe flowers might help. It was such a simple gesture, but it was thoughtful in a way Victoria had never been before. Jasmine was overwhelmed by the flowers, by the crowd, by seeing her art on gallery walls with professional lighting and price tags that reflected its value. "I can't believe this is real," she whispered to me. "Believe it. You earned this." By 7, the gallery was packed. People admired Jasmine's work, asked about the youth program, talked about the gallery's mission. 3 of Jasmine's pieces sold in the first hour. Amanda Chen from the foundation approached me midway through the evening. "This is extraordinary," she said. "Not just the art, though that's exceptional, but the whole ecosystem you've created. Supporting emerging artists, providing free programs for underprivileged kids, building community. This is exactly what we're looking for." "Thank you. It means a lot. I can tell you unofficially that you'll be receiving the Community Impact Award. The official announcement will come next week, but I wanted you to know. You've built something special here, Emily." I managed to thank her professionally before excusing myself to the bathroom, where I cried happy tears for 5 minutes straight. When I emerged, Marcus was standing by the office with Victoria. "There's something we need to show you," he said. They led me to the back office. Sitting on my desk was a large envelope with my name on it. "What is this?" "Open it," Victoria said. Inside were letters. Dozens of them, in Dad's handwriting. "I found them when I was going through some boxes at my place," Victoria explained. "Mom must have saved them. They're letters Dad wrote to you over the years, birthday letters he never sent, notes he wrote when you were a baby, letters from when you were in college. I thought you should have them." I pulled one out with shaking hands. It was dated a month after I'd moved home to care for him. "My dearest Emily. You told me today that you don't regret giving up your gallery job, but I see the sadness in your eyes when you look at the art books you brought home. I'm so sorry that loving me costs you so much. I want you to know that I see your sacrifice. I understand what you've given up. And someday, when this is over, I hope you'll find your way back to art. Not because you need to prove anything, but because art is part of who you are, and the world deserves to see what you can create. You're going to do amazing things, my brave girl. I believe that with my whole heart. Love. Dad. I couldn't stop crying. Marcus held me while Victoria stood awkwardly nearby, crying herself. "There are 37 letters," Victoria said. "He wrote to you constantly. About how proud he was, about his hopes for your future, about how much he loved you. I thought you should have them. To know how he really felt." "Thank you," I managed to say. Thank you." We stood there in the back office, the 3 of us, Marcus, Victoria, and me, while the party continued outside. 3 people connected by loss and love and the complicated work of building something new from broken pieces. Someone knocked on the door. "Jordan." "Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here to see you. Says it's important." We went back out to the gallery. Standing by the entrance was a man I didn't recognize, 50-ish, expensive suit, carrying a briefcase. "Emily Hartwell?" he asked. "Yes. My name is Thomas Brennan. I'm Daniel's lawyer. Could we speak privately?" My stomach dropped. Victoria grabbed my hand. "Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of my sister and my husband." Brennan looked uncomfortable. "Very well. I'm here on Daniel's behalf. He's up for early release review in 3 years, and he's asked me to approach you about writing a letter of support." I stared at him. "You're joking. I understand this is difficult, but Daniel has been a model prisoner. He's completed anger management courses, financial ethics training, and has been working in the prison library. He's genuinely remorseful for his actions and—" "Stop." My voice was cold. "Daniel committed fraud. He stole from my dying father. He tried to have me arrested on false charges. He attempted to destroy my reputation and my life. And now he wants me to help him get out of prison early. He's your brother." "No, he's not. He's someone who shares my DNA and spent years proving he has no concept of family loyalty." The answer is no. Absolutely not. Brennan's expression hardened. "Miss Hartwell, I should mention that Daniel has information that could be problematic for you regarding your father's estate. He's been reluctant to use it, but if you're not willing to help him—" "Are you threatening me?" Marcus stepped forward. "Because if you are, I have lawyers who would love to discuss that with you." Brennan held up his hands. I'm simply delivering my client's message. Message delivered, I said. Now get out of my gallery. He left. The party continued, but I was shaken. Victoria pulled me aside. Do you think he actually has something? She asked. No. Daniel's desperate. He thought I'd cave if he threatened me. But I have nothing to hide. Richard made sure of that. Still, maybe we should. No. Victoria, I spent a year learning not to let Daniel manipulate me. I'm not starting again now. She nodded. Okay, but if you need anything, if he does try something, I'm here. I'll testify, I'll help with lawyers, whatever you need. It was the first time Victoria had offered to fight for me instead of against me. Thank you, I said. And I meant it. The rest of the evening was perfect. Jasmine sold 6 more pieces. The foundation people left with glowing impressions. The community showed up in force to support the gallery. And as I stood there, surrounded by art and people and possibilities, I realized something. I'd won. Not just the inheritance, not just the trial. I'd won the bigger battle, the one for my own identity, my own purpose, my own peace. Daniel was in prison, trying to manipulate me from behind bars. Victoria was in therapy, working to become someone better. And I was here, living the life Dad had wanted for me. The climactic revelation wasn't about exposing my siblings' sins that had happened in court. It was about realizing that their approval, their presence, their acceptance. I didn't need any of it anymore. I was free. The Seattle Arts Foundation's Community Impact Award was announced the following week. It came with a $100,000 grant, a feature in their annual publication, and invitations to present at their national conference. More importantly, it came with opportunities. Other cities reached out wanting to replicate our model. Donors approached us about funding expansion. Artists from across the country submitted applications to be part of our programs. The Morrison Gallery became bigger than I'd ever imagined. I hired Jordan as co-director with a salary that reflected her worth. We brought on 3 more staff members. We expanded the youth program to serve 50 kids. We launched a mentorship program connecting established artists with emerging ones. And Jasmine? She got accepted to one of the top art schools in the country with a full scholarship. She cried when she told me, and I cried right along with her. I wouldn't be here without you, she said. You would have made it anyway. I just opened a door. You walked through it yourself. But I knew that wasn't entirely true. Opportunity mattered. Support mattered. Someone believing in you when you couldn't believe in yourself. That mattered most of all. Dad's foundation flourished too. We funded 10 major research projects in ALS and other neurodegenerative diseases. We provided financial support to 200 family caregivers, giving them the resources I desperately needed during those 6 years. We partnered with hospitals to develop better support systems for families facing terminal illness. The money Dad left me was doing exactly what he'd hoped, changing lives, supporting people, building something that would outlast all of us. Daniel served 3 years before becoming eligible for parole. He applied, I wrote a letter opposing it, and he was denied. His lawyer threatened to sue, something about defamation, but Richard shut that down quickly with a reminder about all the documented evidence of Daniel's crimes. Daniel would serve his full 8 years. And when he got out, he'd be someone else's problem. Victoria continued therapy. She visited Seattle every few months, always respectful of boundaries, always proving through consistent action that she really had changed. We had dinner sometimes, talked about Mom and Dad without the conversations devolving into arguments, slowly built something that looked like a relationship. I didn't know if we'd ever be close. But we were cordial and occasionally warm, and that was more than I'd expected a year ago. Marcus became a partner at his firm, the position he'd turned down before. This time, we were in a place where he could accept it without it disrupting our life. He specialized in nonprofit law and helped me manage the legal complexities of the foundation and gallery. We bought a house. Not too big, not too fancy, but ours. With a studio where I could paint, I'd started again, tentatively, working through my grief one brushstroke at a time. With a guest room for when Victoria visited. With a garden where we'd plant flowers every spring. It was the life we'd planned 10 years ago, just delayed and transformed by everything we'd survived. 1 year after the opening, on the anniversary of Dad's death, I visited his grave. I'd avoided it until now, too painful, too raw. But I felt like I finally had something to say. Marcus came with me. We brought flowers, sunflowers, Dad's favorite. I sat on the grass next to his headstone, Marcus a respectful distance away, and talked. Hey, Dad. Sorry it took me so long to visit. I've been busy building the life you wanted for me. The gallery's doing great. We won an award, and we're expanding to 3 more cities next year. Your foundation is funding research and helping caregivers. I'm using the money exactly how you taught me, to build something that matters. Victoria's trying. I don't know if we'll ever be close, but she's trying, and I'm letting her. I think you'd want that. Daniel's in prison. I'm not sorry about that. I know you'd want me to be the bigger person, to forgive and move forward. Maybe someday, but not yet. Marcus is wonderful. You knew that already. You told me once, after you met him, that I should hold on to him. I'm glad I listened. I miss you. Every day. I miss the late-night conversations and your terrible jokes and the way you looked at me like I was capable of anything. But I'm okay. Better than okay. I'm happy, Dad. I built a life I'm proud of, and that's what you wanted. I stood up, brushed grass off my pants. Marcus joined me, putting his arm around my waist. He'd be proud of you, Marcus said. I know. And that's enough. We drove back to the gallery, where Jordan was teaching an afternoon session. Jasmine was visiting from college, helping out during her break. The place was full of art and laughter and possibility. This was my legacy. Not the money, not the inheritance, not the victory over my siblings. This. The gallery full of kids learning to transform pain into beauty. The foundation helping people survive the kind of crisis I'd survived. The life I'd built from the ashes of everything I'd lost. Victoria called that evening. Hey, I was thinking about Dad today. Thought maybe you were too. I was. Visited his grave. How was it? Hard. But good. I think I'm finally at peace with everything that happened. That's good, Em. That's really good. A pause. I'm proud of you, you know. Of everything you've built. Of who you've become. Thanks, Victoria. That means something. I know we're not there yet. Maybe we'll never be the sisters we should have been. But I'm grateful you're giving me the chance to try. Me too. After we hung up, I sat on the couch with Marcus, looking out at the Seattle skyline, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of pain. I still had bad days, still had nightmares sometimes, still got angry when I thought about everything my siblings had put me through. But underneath all that was something solid and unshakable, the knowledge that I'd survived the worst and come out stronger. That I'd taken betrayal and loss and used it to build something beautiful. That I was exactly who I was supposed to be. My phone buzzed. An email from a gallery in Chicago, asking about bringing our program there. Another city, another opportunity to expand Dad's legacy. I smiled and started typing a response. This was my life now. Not the one I'd planned at 23, but something richer and deeper and more meaningful than I could have imagined. I was Emily Hartwell. Daughter, wife, gallery owner, foundation director, survivor. The girl they'd called useless had proven them wrong in every possible way. And that was the sweetest victory of all. So that's my story. The story of how I went from the family doormat to the woman who owned everything my siblings had ever wanted. I'm not going to tell you that revenge is always sweet, because sometimes it isn't. Sometimes winning means losing things you can never get back, time, innocence, the family you thought you had. But I will tell you this, showing up matters. Loving people without expecting anything in return matters. Building something that outlasts your pain matters. My siblings called me useless because I gave up my dreams to care for our dying father. They couldn't understand that sacrifice without immediate reward wasn't weakness, it was strength. And in the end, Dad saw that strength. He rewarded it not because I'd earned payment, but because he wanted to make sure I'd never be vulnerable again. That I'd have the resources to build whatever life I wanted. I built a good one. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about people who survived the unthinkable and came out stronger. Drop a comment and let me know what part hit you hardest. Was it the funeral confrontation? The trial? The moment with Jasmine? And if you're dealing with your own family drama, your own caregiving burden, your own siblings who don't understand sacrifice, I see you. What you're doing matters, even when no one acknowledges it. Keep showing up. Keep loving. Keep building. The people who matter will notice. And someday, when the dust settles and the crisis passes, you'll have something they'll never have, the knowledge that you were there when it counted. That's worth more than any inheritance. Thanks for listening. Until next time.